Enzorecto, kalaban ang katiwalian at kasinungalingan, kakampi sa katotohanan at kabutihan.
Tostado ngayon itong si Badoy sa tanong ng mga taga-media. Nito po kasing nakaraan lang na araw nag-file ng COC para tumakbo bilang representante ng mga indigenous people dito sa Pilipinas, itong sina Badoy. Dito sa pag-file nila, tinanong sila ng mga taga-media kung papaano ba daw nila maproproteksyonan ang mga katutubong mamamayan laban sa Pangre-Redtag sa kanila. Dito nagbagting at nawala na sa maayos na sagot sina Badoy. At tanging isinagot na lang niya ay puro paninisi sa mga rebelde, na ang layo-layo naman sa tanong. Anyway, panoorin na muna natin itong mga pangyayari na ito at saka po ako magbibigay ng komento.
Hello. Ma'am, sir, good afternoon. Ma'am, may we confirm if you're among the nominees of the party list?
I'm standing in front of you. Yes, I am.
Yes,
I'm the second party nominee.
Second party nominee po. Thank you po.
Go ahead. Please, pakibanggit lang ng name and organization nyo. Media org. Pakipasa ng form. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Gio from TV5. My question is, how are we going to protect yung mga katutubo natin na biktima ng red tagging?
The biggest problem when it comes to the ancestral domain is peace and order. We had been to a lot of this ancestral domain. And the number one problem is the continuous presence in the violence that is being inflicted to them by the CPP, NPA, NDF. We had been on this advocacy for the last 5 years, being a spokesperson of the National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict. So my question to you is that, if you say that they are victims of red tagging, what about the victims, the indigenous peoples who are the victims of the communist terrorist organizations? We have, in my own, when I had served the Caraga region as regional director for the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples, we have 21 cases of reprisal killings from these organizations. So my question is, who is speaking for these victims? Who are speaking for the indigenous peoples that has been the victims of this communist terrorist organization for the last 53 years?
To Ma'am
May I add, please?
Yes, please.
Something like 60 to 90% of NPAs come from the indigenous sectors. What that means is that our indigenous brothers and sisters have been victimized, have been tormented and exploited by the communist terrorists CPP, NPA, and NDF. But as big as the harm that the CPP, NPA, and NDF has done towards our brothers and sisters that are indigenous, the harm that a government that doesn't care for them, that is indifferent to them, is no match to the harm that the CPP has done to them. So, to answer your question, kung ano man yung ibig sabihin ng red tagging na yan, no? Wala siguro yan kumpara sa ginawa ng CPP, NPA, NDF. The most heinous crimes against our indigenous peoples were done by the CPP, NPA, NDF. Child trafficking, human trafficking, slavery, child abuse, recruitment to violent extremism, terrorist financing, rape, all these sexual crimes. No, so, I guess that's my answer. This is part of our advocacy, is to protect our indigenous brothers and sisters from the exploitation, from being targeted by the CPP, NPA, NDF, and to hopefully be part of a government that cares for them, because we have experienced from our short stint in government, no, that the transformative and powerful role of good governance. Because as it happens, no, when finally NTF-ELCA came to the hinterlands, the Gidas, where the IPs were, they surrendered by tens of thousands. And this was, as a result of that, napadapa natin ang CPP, NPA, NDF for the first time in over 50 years.
It's good to know that you're advocating for the rights of our indigenous peoples, but how about, I'm curious lang, how about, how do we protect those who were wrongly accused na miyembro ng mga makakaliwang grupo. How do we protect those mga katutubo natin?
What do you mean wrongly accused? Can you elaborate? Who wrongly accused them?
Certain groups who wrongly accused our indigenous groups participating in the leftist groups.
Yes, may I please answer, no?
Yes, ma'am, please.
The
Thank you.
elephant in the room is the propaganda machine of the CPP, NPA, NDF that have used terms like social activists, environmentalists, organizers to mask who they really are, recruiters of the CPP, NPA, NDF that have targeted our indigenous brothers and sisters, and as a result of that, extreme poverty, generational poverty, massacres. No, so this has happened to our indigenous brothers and sisters. So, when you ask a question like that, it's not so clear what you really mean. Now, what do you mean by wrongly accused, and can you at least give an example? If you mean maybe Chad Book, is that what you mean? Chad Book? Did you mean that? Okay, so could you give an example, please? Because the CPP, NPA, NDF has a massive propaganda machine that's been in existence for over half a century.
And just to elaborate, Ipanao Sambayanan is also a conglomerate of former rebels that we have. It's a part of our alliance network, and we have tens and hundreds of testimonies coming from them as to how the CPP, NPA, NDF operates. In fact, we have one of the leaders here, and they had been giving us affidavits including under oath as to what the problem was and how it's to be solved, and who are the people behind these organizations. And I think that we can safely assume that the advocacy coming from this party list will reflect the efforts coming from the former FRs or the FRs and from the indigenous peoples in trying to attain lasting peace for our country, and especially in the ancestral domains.
Gyro, Rappler.
Hi, ma'am. Good afternoon po. Ma'am, just to follow up from Gio's question, ma'am. Wala po bang parang disconnect, ma'am, that you are running to advocate for the rights of the indigenous people, where in fact, yung mga lumad po ay victims po ng red tagging, particularly of the NTF-LCACs, ma'am. And the Supreme Court, finally, this year, defined red tagging as a threat to life, liberty, and security, ma'am. Thank you.
This organization, the Ipanao Sambayanan Parties, actually is built on the back and the strength, participation, consultation of the indigenous peoples, especially of those coming from Mindanao. And you say that they had been the primary victims of red tagging. My answer to this, they had been the primary victims of the CPP, NP, NDF. We have documented more than 2,000 IP leaders that has been killed. In my state in Caraga, one instance alone, Dato Jomar Bucalis was ambushed. He's trying to remove Salugpungan schools in his area, in his domain. But they were ambushed by the CPP, NPA, NDF, and they were proud to announce it. Just for that single reason, trying to remove schools like that and replace it with DepEd schools. This kind of situation is what we are trying to speak of and fight for. We are speaking for, and I can safely say that, for the indigenous peoples of the country.
Okay.
Gerard, no? There is no disconnect. No, there is no disconnect. In fact, you cannot fight for the rights of the indigenous peoples without unmasking the CPP, NPA, NDF. And you cannot fight for our country without fighting against the CPP, NPA, NDF. There is no disconnect at all. In fact, this is one of those things, top of the list, that we need to do to finally get rid ourselves of the communist terrorists, CPP, NPA, NDF, so that our country can finally move forward and be at par with our neighbors in the ASEAN region.
Hay naku. Puro na lang kayo pagpuksa sa mga rebelde. Kahit hindi naman rebelde, pinaghihinalaan ninyo. Mabuti kung mga pasaway na rebelde ang puntirya ninyo. Ang kaso, kahit hindi naman ay nadadamay. Hindi naman namin pinagtatanggol ang mga rebelde na abusado. At tutol din kami sa mga karahasan na ginagawa nila. Ang problema lang, overacting na kayo kung magbintang at idamay pa pati yung mga aktivista na ang gusto lang naman ay mapabuti lang ang bayan. Lalo na yung mga hindi naman aktivista at rebelde na walang ano-ano ay binibintangan na ninyo, na wala naman kayong ebidensya man lang. Hindi ba ninyo alam na kada bintang ninyo ay pwedeng manganib ang buhay nila? Dahil sa pagsasabi nyo na sila ay rebelde, pero hindi naman pala, pwede silang patayin or dukutin ng mga sundalo. Yan ang resulta ng kaka-Redtag ninyo, sana maisip ninyo iyan. At bago ko tapusin itong video na ito, may narinig akong sinabi mo Badoy, sino ba ang tinutukoy mo dito? Si Kibuloy ba? Parang si Kibuloy ang pinariringan mo dito. Ito ulitin po natin ang kanyang sinabi.
The most heinous crimes against our indigenous peoples were done by the CPP, NPA, NDF. Child trafficking, human trafficking, slavery, child abuse, recruitment.
Ano ulit ang sinabi mo? Ulitin natin.
Child trafficking, human trafficking, slavery, child abuse, recruitment.
Teka. Parang pamilyar yung mga sinabi mo ha? Parang kaso ito ng iyong amo na si Kibuloy. 'Di ba? Pinariringgan mo ba si Kibuloy? Anyway, dito na lang po ang aking topic. Mabuhay po tayo.
May hulanong salita na ang ibig sabihin dito ay ang pagkakaisa.
Bunyog Party List.
Halika na, Bunyog Party List ka na. Halika na, Bunyog Party List ka na.
Sa susunod, ang atinang suportahan, Bunyog Party List, nagtataguyod ng katotohanan, lumalaban para sa bayan.